I think the state and those of us in the state just want to make sure the resources are there, the skill, the experience is there for the response to be adequate.
Okay, the second part of that is, as Laura said, the Hurricane Center is fully staffed. And, I'm going to make sure that our offices, when there's a hurricane threat, that's going to have the resources that they need to make sure every warning goes out. And I do want to say that, with NOAA's support, Laura's support, and Congress's support, and we're looking at some tools to be able to look at long-term and how to make sure that we continue to have the staffing that we need long-term. So just appreciate that support. We're working on some things. And, we had some folks go, and, but we're going to make sure that we have everything that we have on the front lines. Every warning is going to go out. Yep.
Yes, right in the middle here.
Rachel Hanley with WWL. I am hearing that the National Hurricane Center is fully staffed, but we know that there have been cuts to NOAA, and we have heard from some meteorologists that that's affected the resolution of forecasts. Question for Ken Graham, is this going to affect hurricane forecasting this year relative to years past?
The answer is no. So, we've got the HAFS model is the best model we've ever had. And, the question keeps coming up at the upper air. Upper air is one piece of observations that we have. We use satellites, we use ground-based information. We're actually going to work with industry. We're looking at different type of balloon technology that able to not just go up and back to get the balloon information, but there's some private companies that are actually longer term type of balloons that get soundings along the way. So we're looking at supplemental information, working with them. So the balloons are just one piece of the information, but the models are as good as they've been. We're going to continue to improve those. I'm excited about HAFS to see how it does this year. And we're not going backward with HAFS. We're actually going forward and making those improvements. So yeah, we'll be able to make sure that the warnings go out and we have the data that we need. And the hurricane hunters are also ready to go, both at NOAA and the Air Force. That information that we get from the hurricane hunters is crucial to the hurricane forecast. And I've seen anywhere from 10 to 18 to 20% increase in the accuracy of track and also intensity with the data from the P3s and the C-130s and also the G4 at the upper levels. It makes a big difference, and they're going to be ready to go as well.
All right, we have a couple questions from our online attendees. Several different iterations of this question, but I'll call out Ken Mahan from the Boston Globe asking about whether our outlook can be specific to certain regions, talking about the possibility of a tropical cyclone impacting a certain region in the country or in a U.S. territory.
I can start it, and Matt's the expert. Look, these outlooks are incredible to give us an overall idea of how busy the season can be. It is not a forecast for landfall. It's important. That forecast does not forecast where storms are going to occur, right? I've seen, you can see sudden shifts or different shifts in the Bermuda High, and all of a sudden all the storms stay offshore, or a shift there can take all the storms in the Gulf. So it's those type of things that could change the entire season, basically, on impact, right? So that's the biggest thing to get away from this. It's really looking at the overall season, but not really anything for landfall. That's important on that one. I get it right? Good.
All right, another question online, a few different iterations of this as well, but Seth Bornstein from the Associated Press would like to know, you mentioned that the primary driver of this particular outlook is the above average temperatures in the Atlantic. How much of a factor is climate change in that ocean temperature right now?
Look, you got, when you have a planet that's warmer, you look at the ocean temperatures could be impacted by that. So yeah, and really the warmer ocean temperatures is really consistent with us being in a more active season, more active period of time, more active era associated with the hurricane activity. So we're seeing that. And when it comes to, some of the factors that we see associated with hurricane season, we're not really seeing any changes in the numbers or even the strength when it comes to, a warming of the planet. But we are seeing rainfall. We're seeing heavier rainfall rates. And, you go to these communities, you're seeing some of the rainfall, warmer planet, the atmosphere holds more moisture. So you are seeing a situation where some of the rainfall rates are higher. And that's, once again, I stressed water huge in my comments. And we need help to be able to really reach out to the communities to let them know the dangers of water. Inland, coastal, the rainfall is heavy year round. We're seeing some of these floods, and we're hearing from more and more communities. It's like, wow, I've lived here my whole life. I've never seen some of these rainfall rates like that. So we are seeing, that's the biggest evidence that we see associated with the tropical seasons, just really looking at that heavy rainfall. We got to be really prepared for that. And you got more people on the coast. A lot more people have moved to the coast. You got the social economic factors associated with moving to the coast, and there's a lot more people in harm's way as well. So there's a lot of different factors that that go into that whole thing. So that's it, Eric.
Another question from Rebecca Hersher of NPR. She says, I appreciate that Ken shared generator safety tips. Can you share any other specific preparation recommendations for people living in hurricane-prone areas?
You know, getting ready for hurricane season, you know, it's easy to say just have a kit, right? Not everybody has the ability to get a kit. So I think the number one thing to do before hurricane season is know your threat. Are you living along on a river or a bayou? Since I'm here, right? Does it flood? The rivers and bayous, they flow backward. The water pushes up from storm surge. There's places that you don't normally expect to flood. This water flows backward into these channels and floods people that may not have flooded before. So know your threat. If you're along a river, along a bayou, you know to prepare for that flooding. The other ones, look around your house. Look at the trees. We lose a lot of people to falling trees, right? So look around. You know, what can you do to mitigate some of those dangers? And Danielle and I've done surveys in the local area where it looks like the biggest tree in the world just got hit by a tornado. You look at it, there's a billion termites in the dang thing. It was ready to fall anyway, right? So these type of things, really look at your threat. Are you on the coast, right? Know your evacuation plan if you're on the coast. The biggest thing also as well is check your insurance. There's deadlines associated when you could get flood insurance. There's deadlines associated with when you could get some of the insurance. So check your insurance plan, make sure you're covered, right? There's different types of insurance depending on where you live along the coast or inland. The number one thing, depend on your emergency manager. Let me tell you, these emergency managers are some of the most amazing, dedicated people across this whole country to keep people safe. Listen to them. I've seen it a million times. The information that the emergency managers are getting and the parish president making the call on evacuations comes from us. It's our forecast. We actually provide impact-based decision support. You know, we're eye to eye with them. So we'll have somebody in the EOC, we'll have somebody doing the briefings several times a day. So everything that they do is based on science, everything that they do is based on what we're doing. So the emergency managers and NOAA and the Weather Service, we're tight, right? So listen to them. The number one thing is just make sure you know where to get information. And here's the last bit of advice. If you don't know what to do, ask. You got the local Weather Service forecast office, you have resources, Red Cross, you got the parishes and counties across this country. If you don't know what to do, ask. It's such a simple thing, right? But a lot of people won't. And then during the danger, they won't know what to do. Please ask ahead of time.
Okay, we are starting to run short on time, so this will be our last question for today. Scott Dance of the Washington Post has a question for Matt Rosenkrantz. How are you factoring in ENSO status into this forecast?
Yeah, so the ENSO status, we have a 54% chance of being in an ENSO neutral this year. And that's really going to not tramp down on the signals in the Atlantic where those warm sea surface temperatures are. We do know that during neutral events, you end up with about 2.5 to 3 more named storms than you would during El Nino events. So we're allowing for that. That's what the forecast is for that above normal season, because that ENSO neutral will not get in the way of the favorable conditions that are in the Atlantic as well.
All right, that concludes our press conference for today. And once again, I'd like to remind you that all materials, all the graphic slides are available on NOAA.gov for your reference. Again, the press team can be reached at nws.pa@noaa.gov. And thank you very much for joining us today. Have a great day.